Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Real estate in the Philippines. There are opportunities, and like every place, there are risks. Timing is always important, and the upcoming 6 months to a year may offer the opportunities. In this video, I'm going to go over some of the information that I've learned as I've been researching this topic. I've visited a number of websites, listened to a number of discussions by property related people and news people on the internet, and discussion of where the Philippines property system is going, and going to go over some of that. Understand that you should do your own research and due diligence and understand what your own financial conditions are, what your goals are, and your potential and your limitations with your assets. Foreigners are not allowed to own land in the Philippines. You can own a condominium. You can own a building on land. There are some areas where the developer has classified a townhouse type structure as a condominium. If you build a building, which you can do, you can own a building, you can own a house, but you need to lease the land. And I think there's either 25-year leases that are extendable or 50-year leases. And you suggest you get a good lawyer if you're going to do that. Some people try to set up a corporation, and that's kind of a sticky point. Even there, 60% of the corporation needs to be in the names of Filipinos, and I know people who have set up businesses like that, and therefore the corporation owns the land, but suggest you talk to a good lawyer if you're going that direction. There again, that may or may not be legal in the particular situation that you're in. First of all, I want to go over some of the data that I found to put things into perspective. And there again, I got this information off of a number of sites, and I just assume that they are somewhat accurate. Some of this information came from home loans, as a matter of fact. So that would exclude those transactions that where cash was paid, which is a big chunk of the market. But anyway, we're going to go through some of the basic information about the Philippines. There's much more information about Manila than there is about the rest of the country, and there's information about the country as a whole. It's more difficult to get information about other locations, and as everybody knows, location, location, location is so important when it comes to real estate. Anyway, the Philippines has gone through a huge house price boom from 2010 to 2018. Makati, which is a higher end business district, central business district in the Manila area. In fact, prices rose for housing prices, which would include condominiums, I presume, 132%. 2019, partly because of the economy slowing down, partly because of the U.S.-China trade war, and the slowing economy in general. But still, the Philippines has, and even going forward, has one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia at over 6%. In 2019, residential property across nationwide rose just under 10% adjusted for inflation. And that information is taken from bank reports on loans year on year. And now we'll break it down. Condominiums up through the third quarter of 2019 rose about 29.1%. Single, detached, and attached houses only rose 2.4%. We're talking about 2019. Duplex houses prices rose 24.8%, and townhouses rose 6% during 2019 nationwide. What is driving this growth, and will it continue? There are a number of factors, and BPOs, business processing outsourcing companies, that have moved into the Philippines over the many years, and which are call centers and other customer service where companies from other countries outsource much of their services. Millions and millions of people involved and hired in that industry. POGOs, POGOs, that is the Philippine Offshore Gaming Organizations, and primarily Chinese companies that come here, set up offshore gaming operations, hired tons and tons of Chinese here. That's another subject for another video. And they all need housing, and so the companies oftentimes even buy up. I know over on Mactan Island, I think the Chinese company bought one whole tower of a condominium, uses it as a gaming operation as well as residences for their employees. There are other manufacturing service companies that see the Philippines as a very good opportunity for them to expand as well. And why is that? It's because of the low uh, cost of doing business here in general, and you have a low cost, educated, English speaking workforce here, something that very few companies have. They also have a bureaucratic system that they're trying to improve. They're working at improving it and making it easier for companies to start up and continue doing business. They're running a little bit late on that front, unfortunately, but they're working in that direction. You also have OFWs, overseas Filipino workers, pouring billions and billions of dollars back, repatriating those funds, sending them back into the country. And a large percent of that goes into the residential housing market. In fact, in 2019, cash remittances sent back to the Philippines by overseas workers was about 30 billion US dollars. That's billion, or about 8.5% of GDP, so a big part of the economy. And it's estimated that 60% of those remittances go directly or indirectly into real estate purchases. Now, up and above the official remittances, there are millions or billions of dollars of unofficial remittances that people bring back into the country. And they do that unofficially, of course, in order to try to negate or try to lessen the amount of taxes on those dollars. And this chart shows the increase in remittances every year. And the real estate companies actually send sales forces out to the various places where the Filipinos live and work, and do seminars, and in order to sell their condominium units, their housing development subdivision units. Another factor here in the Philippines is the generally low cost of office rental space for the POGOs and BPOs. And during this present crisis that we're in, that will probably continue, even become more competitive as they come out of the crisis into the recovery period. More and more companies overseas will be looking for, because their business has been disrupted to a great deal, it will be a perfect time for many to be searching for new solutions, more efficient solutions, and they may find that the Philippines is a very good fit for them. Tourism also. Tourism, I think last year, 2019, increased about 15%, and they will probably continue to grow. Philippines has so much to offer to tourists, and they need places to stay. And I know here in Cebu City, where I've been for about 4 years, there has really been a shortage of hotel spaces, Airbnb spaces for quite a number of years. Uh, so I don't think that they're really overbuilding at this point in time. That could be a point in the future. In fact, I talked to a Philippine real estate agent who had worked many years over in Thailand, and she told me that One of the reasons some of the prices for apartments are lower over there in many areas is that they overbuilt many years ago, therefore creating more competition. That had happened in Phoenix when I moved to Phoenix in 1980s. They had grossly overbuilt, and you could buy one condominium at a discounted price, get two for free. Of course, I'm exaggerating more than a little there, but they had a major crash in property prices at that point in time. Another factor, expats from around the world, as many of you know, it's very easy to fall in love with the Philippines, and they find some very good reasons to come here and stay here. Uh, anyway, many of them also plan on building houses, and in fact, I did a video a couple of years ago, I think, and it has just garnered enormous amount of views. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video about how much does it cost to build a home in the Philippines, something like that title, and I will put a link at the end of this. So there are many, many, many thousands of people, foreigners, who come here, and their desire is to raise a family, get married, and build a house someplace in the Philippines. There again, location is very important. There are many, many, many subdivisions in various parts of the Philippines, many opportunities, so do your research. I will also bring up a couple warnings about the market, real estate market, a little bit later. But first, a couple of extra points here. 1997, there was an Asian financial crisis. 1997, 2004, luxury condo prices, in fact, dropped 24%. I believe that was in the Metro Manila, probably the Makati area. I'm not sure exactly, but anyway, there was a huge financial crisis. Prices dropped for properties, and adjusted for inflation. Key point there: adjusted for inflation, they still have not recovered from that property crash. Another factor is REITs, Real Estate Investment Trust Act of 2019, took effect I think in 2020, and it has loosened up the requirements of listing properties on the Philippine Stock Exchange, and loosened up properties as far as the assets required and the percent of ownership required by the public. And Colliers, which is a big property management company in many parts of the world, in fact, very active here in the Philippines, claims that it will redefine the Philippine property market, commercial as well as residential. Some of you may have probably are invested in REITs back in your own country, so you know a little bit about that. And it should also increase the construction and infrastructure sectors in the country as well, because there will be more demand for streets, bridges, and other infrastructure projects. Now let's talk about the real estate market. It is different here in the Philippines than it is in the USA and many other countries, I'm sure. And we're going to touch on some of the negative items here as well. Anyway, the market itself, of course, it's broke down into the high end market, local high earners, and expatriates who are buying, moving, investing, those types of things. And you have the middle tier, and the middle tier includes most of the rest of us. And you have a lower tier who includes most of the Philippine population. But anyway, let's go back to the middle tier where most people watching this video will be interested in. Generally requires a monthly amortization of about 10,500 pesos, or about 210 US dollars, which requires dispensable income greater than 35,000 pesos per month, about 700 US dollars. So in order to qualify for a loan, the Filipino would have to have about 35,000 in salary per month to qualify for that type of loan. For a house loan of 2 million, which is about 40,000 US dollars, 2 million pesos. So what you're finding is that many of these developers are doing in-house financing because many of the people cannot afford, will not, and do not qualify for regular bank loans from many of the banks. So that creates an issue. Expats, of course, from other countries, because that's what an expat is, generally have a very difficult time qualifying for loans if you're over 60 years old, definitely if you're over 65, unless you have some collateral assets to put up. And there again, the banks may be very leery of setting up loans for that amount. Generally, loans here, even though in theory they can get 30-year loans here, in general they're generally very quite short, 5 or 10-year type loans. Purchasing land and giving loans for land and property in the Philippines can be rather risky here. And one of the reasons is the public land law of 1903. 1903 stated that all the land should be surveyed, and that is still not taken place here in 2020. So there is an issue with land titles, getting clear land titles, even if you're told that they have a clear land title. Something may come up. There might be some relative on one side of the family who still claims they have title to the land, part of your land. There are a few banks that offer mortgage lending because of that, is what I have read on one site, and rather than just telling you they won't loan the money, is that they will just set up so many requirements that it's almost impossible to get the loans. Is what I have read. Registration problems. If you can find a piece of property you're interested in. I've had a friend that was trying to buy a property over on Negros Island up in the mountains, and he got to know one of the local officials, and after some trips over there back and forth, turned out that the guy he was talking to and putting a lot of his trust in had a vested interest in that land. So in the end, he kind of backed out of the deal. And there again, foreigners can't own land anyway. There are lengthy delays oftentimes in the foreclosure process because of a weak bank system. So banks there again are very leery of putting the loans out. Loan approvals can take a long time, partly just checking on all the requirements for titles and on the lendee as well. There tend to be high transaction costs, and I'm not sure of the full details there. Red tape involved, of course. And there is a thing, and when you go to sell property, and all you expats need to know this too, if you want to buy and sell, when you go to sell, there is what's called a capital gains tax on property. And in reality, it's not really a capital gains tax. It's more of an income tax, is what I have read. And it is about 6%. I've seen a couple different figures, but about 6% on the sales price of the property. Supply and demand and costs involved. Now, I looked at a number of charts and graphs, and many, if not all of them, were proprietary type information or copyrighted information, so I can't put them up here. But generally, the costs for building and renting out spaces here, and they're often looking at the higher end units. So, if you're looking at a mid to lower end unit, those figures probably aren't as accurate, obviously. But the Philippines ranks very well competitively with many of the other countries, which there again is a draw for people and companies to come to the Philippines. They're not always the lowest, but they're down there among the lowest. Now, even though there are 10 million plus Filipino overseas workers in the airline, the cruise ship, the shipping lines, the hotels, the casinos, all over the world, as nurses, as teachers. Many of those, a big percentage of those, have already bought houses or are buying houses, so they are no longer part of the demand structure. So that reduces demand there. The numbers and the graphs that I saw from a number of locations felt that there was, in fact, that mid-tier section, that there was overdevelopment. There again, it didn't specify which areas, but overdevelopment in some areas where there is more units available than there is demand, oversupplied. And so that is something to keep in mind. I think, and with the prices have been rising quite rapidly, even in the 4 years that I've been in Cebu City, the Philippines. My own feeling is that they have to level off because there are fewer and fewer people who can afford those price ranges, and those people that buy at those higher rates. You know, if you buy a unit at a lower end cost, pre-selling cost, you're able to rent it out or live there at a lower cost. If you buy at the higher end after it's built and ready to move in, you have to get a return on your investment. You have to rent that out at a higher rate than those who bought in at the lower rate. So then you're at a competitive disadvantage. So what are your goals? What are your desires? Are you an investor? Do you want to build a place to live in? I would be interested to hear what your thoughts and ideas are about this. Location, location, location. So much depends upon location. If you just want a place to retire to live, to work out of, that is a whole different thing than if you're an investor hoping to get a return on your investment. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, still is projecting a growth rate for the Philippines of 6.3%, even as we're in the midst of a certain crisis. And the Philippines is projecting a higher rate than that. Either way, that is a quite high rate, and they will continue to be a very competitive influence in the world economy. And they've got a lot of potential here, I think. Do your homework. I tried to present a few facts and ideas about the real estate market in the Philippines and other parts of the world as well. And in the end, as humans, we often make emotional decisions. But anyway, you should take a look at some information, do your homework, and good luck to whatever your plans are. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I will put a couple more links at the end of this video. Please like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Safe travels to you all wherever you're at, and I'll see you next time.